Hi, beautiful human. I'm Zach. That's Santa. We welcome to the studio of Mango Pepsi loving Clay Aiken.
Yes. People give me the Mango Pepsis, too. They bring them to me on tour. It's perfect. I don't even have to stock them up on the bus. It's lovely. Thank you for having me very much. Thank you very much for having me.
It is an honor to have you here.
Oh, well, I don't know how much it is of an honor it is, but it's fun.
It's very... you are so fascinating.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Fascinating... We'll take as a good thing, yeah.
I mean, come on. It's not many days where we get to have a conversation with somebody who has run for political office in more ways than one. I think American Idol was also running for political office in a way.
Yeah, with a little bit less vitriol.
Yeah, I mean, you garnered 24 million votes between you and Ruben.
Not in my congressional campaign.
No, totally different. But also we have. Wait, hold on. Do you hear that? That's the bells. They're ringing.
Oh, they are ringing. Christmas bells are ringing. Aren't you clever? Yes.
10 years since we've had an album.
Yeah, it's been a little longer than that. I told my publicist I think it's not been fully 15 years, but they thought 10 years sounded better than 15 than 14 and a half. So they went with that. But it's been a long time, yes.
They rounded down
yes,
instead
they did
of
round
up.
it down. Yeah, probably to make me seem younger than I am. I'm old, and they wanted me to not look as old as I am.
But can you describe or explain, like, really what your relationship is with the Christmas genre? Because it's long-standing.
Yeah, well, it's cheesy, and I am cheesy. I feel like I'm not the coolest guy in the pop world, right? And Christmas is just, and vocally, I think it's better for me. When I did that first Christmas album, I think I remember, it was 2003, the first album came out, and then the label immediately wanted a Christmas album. And I remember that some of the management at the time were a little bit skeptical of the idea. My attorney was not too much in love. He was helping out. He was very hands-on at the time, was not too in love with the idea of the second album being a Christmas album. And they had their reasons, business-wise. But I was like, that's great. That, for me, is vocally where I feel like I sit. And the label, I think, wasn't quite sure what to do with this weird kid from North Carolina, and Christmas worked. And that first Christmas album did so well that we had a few left over. We did another EP a few years later. I think it's just vocally works for me. It's old school, and I'm sort of old. I was always old school, even in my 20s. So coming back to it just seemed very right for me also. Christmas always worked very well for me in the past. Even now, 20 years after that first one, I'd say that when someone comments to me on the street about something that they like, I'd say over half the time it's like, it's not Christmas in our house until your Christmas album is on, or we always put the Christmas tree up to the Clay Aiken Christmas album. My mom will pull it out every year. So I get more comments about that. It just seemed like, well, that seems like the right thing to do if I'm going to come back and sing again.
Your vocals sound amazing.
Oh, well, thank you. Not today, they don't, but it's this this strawberry and cream Dr. Pepper is not clearing the chords out in any way.
But genuinely, the album is great.
Well, thank you.
It does give the right amount of nostalgic Christmas, but with somewhat of a modern twist. And I don't know, it checks off every box that I'm looking for.
Well, thank you.
How do you curate it, though? Because that has to be somewhat of a challenge.
Well, it is a challenge when you've done a lot of Christmas stuff already, right? So I did the first album 20 years ago. We had to get rid of those. The ones I did on the EP, I did a Broadway show with Ruben in 2018 that was Christmas. And so we couldn't do those. But I wanted them to be songs that people know. I mean, I think one of the things that, at least for me, when I like a Christmas album, it's usually because the song evokes a memory of Christmas for me. So I went into this not wanting any of the songs to be original, to be so original that no one recognized them. We did end up putting one pseudo-original one at the end, but most of them I wanted them to be songs that were absolutely recognizable. And I also didn't want them to be songs that had been covered by so many people that you'd get lost. I mean, it's impossible to do that with Christmas, but Caroling, Caroling, which is the Nat King Cole song, is on the album. Very few people have covered that. Merry Christmas, Darling, which I grew up loving because I love the Carpenters. Not many people have covered that. Now, maybe there's a reason nobody covers that, because no one can do as well as Karen Carpenter. and therefore I might have failed in choosing it. But I wanted songs that people recognized, but also songs that had not been covered very often. Wonderful Christmas Time, the Paul McCartney song.
Yeah.
Very few people have covered it. I think part of the reason is because you can't do better than Paul McCartney did for the original. So Ron Fair, smart enough to kind of really reimagine it. But that was part of the main goal when curating, to use your word, the set list, was songs that are recognizable but not overdone.
Makes sense.
I mean, that's the hope. We obviously can't do that with every song. Do You Hear What I Hear? It has been done a lot, but it's not been done in this big triumphant way like we did it. So we made an effort to, when we had to do a song or when we chose a song that had been done a lot, to try to do it a little differently.
How did Pure Imagination end up on the album? Because that's not a Christmas song.
It's not. I just think lyrically it is. I mean, I know it's not. We don't recognize it as a Christmas song. It's a Willy Wonka song. But if you think about the lyrics, Christmas is about, it's childlike, right? We create these new worlds. We decorate our houses to be snowscape scenes, you know. All the windows on Fifth Avenue are decorated to be these imaginary scenes of beautiful vistas, utopia. And that's what Pure Imagination is. Lyrically, it's childlike, like Christmas. It's imagining a new world, which is what we do at Christmas. And I just thought, you know what? People put my favorite things from Sound of Music on Christmas albums all the time, and that ain't no damn Christmas song. So if they can do that with Sound of Music songs, I can do it with Pure Imagination. We put a little sleigh bells and whatnot in it. That works.
How are you setting up the room that you're working in?
I don't really set it up any different ways. I mean, I just go into a studio. I don't love being in the studio, I'll be honest. I'm not a studio person. That's another reason I haven't recorded for a long time. I feed off the audience more. And you don't have that in a studio. Two, there's just, I don't know, there's something about, I don't want to hear myself. I'm one of very few people who goes into the studio. Every producer I've ever worked with has found it very odd that when I put the headphones on, I don't want to hear my vocal. I want none of my vocal in my ear at all. I just want the music. And that totally screws up engineers all across the country because they're not set up to be able to, for me to not hear myself, but them still hear me in the control room. So they have to rewire things because I don't like to hear myself. I will overthink it. I think I get to type A and I'll hear what I'm singing and try to change it as I'm doing it. And it gets too weird for me. So I like to not hear myself. I'll listen to it afterwards. Oh, I want to do that differently. I'll go back in and do it differently. But the studio I get in my head too much in the studio. So I prefer live and for that reason, you know, I don't need the Christmas lights and whatnot in the middle of June. I can pretend it's Christmas anytime.
Well, you're one of the few people on Earth or in the music world who have performed as many covers on the scale that you have. So do you have a system or a process as it relates to like applying your own story to these things or even strategically placing vocals?
No, the process really just becomes learning it so well that you don't have to.
Interesting.
That you don't have to worry about where you're placing, how you're phrasing things. I mean, I'll go back to Idol. I came from a world where it was all covers. You know, nobody. Do they do original songs on Idol now? I think they might occasionally.
They allow it, I think,
right.
maybe in the audition process, but I don't know if it's.
Yeah, it's not a big. I mean, I think they would allow it, but most of it's songs that people know. And when I was on the show, it was mostly songs from decades prior. You know, we weren't singing somewhat current songs. We were singing songs from 30, 40 years prior.
Yeah, because they were cheaper and also recognizable.
Right. And people like that. And if you're watching TV, people can sing along and they're not having to, it's not a song that just came out 6 weeks ago. But I always, the reason I went back to that is because myself and Ruben too, interestingly enough, were the only two who always chose a song to sing each week that we had known for years. A lot of other people would say, oh, I love that particular song, or other contestants would say, oh, the week it's Motown week, and I've always loved that song, so I'm going to learn it this week and try to do it. And I would walk in, find out what the theme was, and say, that's the one I know. I've sung that before. Don't have to. And I would always choose something I always knew. And I think that what the benefit of that was that while other people were spending the week learning a new song, I and Ruben too apparently were spending the week just getting comfortable enough in it that we didn't have to worry about technically what note we needed to hit or what word we needed to say. We could have fun with the song. We could do something different. And so I have done a lot of covers, but they're usually songs that I know well enough that when I do go in the studio and put on the headphones and not hear myself, I can just enjoy it and sing it. And, I guess I liken it to going to a karaoke bar and being a person who has to read the lyrics and follow the bouncing ball.
You know it already.
Or the person who knows it already, so you don't have to worry about that and you can kind of go do your own thing.
Yeah, and in the idol space, that's really, that's so valuable because there's so many other things going on that you have to give time to get comfortable around. The last thing you have fucking time for is to get comfortable with the record you're singing.
I know. And I've told people that over the years. People are always saying, what advice do you give these contestants? And I've always said, pick something you already know. But I think there's always this challenge in these kids' heads that they're going in there and they need to impress. And you do. I mean, obviously, at the point of the show, you have to impress. But they want to impress by singing that song that they've never been able to do before. And, if you're one of the few who's so quick and so good and you can learn it and impress and kill it, then great, go for it. But you're right. Most of the time, you're having to do we used to have to do commercials for Coke and Ford and all that other stuff, and we had herbal essences, and then we have to shoot B-roll for this, that, and the other. So we were exhausted, and we didn't get much time with our music coach or whatnot. So in that hour, I want to spend the time just cutting it down to a part that I already know, versus having to now teach me what do I do here? What's this interval? And it just makes it easier. You're also nowadays, maybe I'm sure these kids are nervous. Back when we were on the show, I mean, I about threw up the first few times I had to walk out on stage with nerves. I'm already nervous about being on national TV back then. I don't want to be nervous about whether or not I'm going to forget the words or forget the melody.
But a lot of that comes down to preparation, right? Like you were preparing for that moment, whether you knew it or not, right? Because there's years of investment where you've even had the opportunity to sing these songs, years of preparation, whether conscious or subconscious,
Maybe. I mean, sir, I never thought I was going to be a singer for a living. I mean, that was not on my plan. I knew I could sing and I enjoyed it, but I never thought, well, this is going to be my career. So it was partly preparation, yes. But also partly what the fuck else are you going to do? I mean, truly, I would stand out there and it was live TV. Ever since then, most of the stuff that I've done post-Idol has been taped, right? But that was live. And so as you're standing behind and waiting for Ryan Seacrest to call your name, when he calls your name, you have two choices. Chicken out and look like an idiot by not going out, or just get the fuck out there and do it. And so that was the only choice you had to do. You have to walk out there and do it, and you just go. And so with all that in me, at least I didn't have to worry about what are the lyrics to Sugar Pie Honey Bunch,
But there has to be some part of you that at least dreamed of being a singer. Like your mom got you studio time as a birthday gift.
She did. She dreamed of me being a singer.
Well,
there you go.
That's really valuable.
Well, it is, but I've just never been. Still am not the person who's good at promoting myself or asking for a record deal, or I'm just not. Thank God I've gotten to a place in an industry where I can have other people do that for me because I'm not good at that. And so my mom wanted that for me. She also dreamed of, I always sang Unchained Melody at home. That was kind of the song if I was going to sing on a talent show or whatever it was when I was a teenager. That was the song that I would sing. And my mom had this dream that I was going to sing Unchained Melody and go to Nashville and be a big star. And lo and behold, maybe a year or so after she really started dreaming that, LeAnn Rimes recorded it and became a big star with it in Nashville. And we were like, damn, that LeAnn Rimes. And so I just would never have been the person who went, when you grew up in North Carolina, you don't dream of going to L.A. to be a singer or going to New York. You dream of going to Nashville because that's where people sound like me. I'm not a country singer necessarily, but that was the closest place. But I would never have been the person who could go to Nashville and knock on doors or play and sing in restaurants or bars or whatnot, hoping that someone could see me. I've always liked I still am the person who kind of would prefer a path that I can know where I'm going to be 10 years from now. And so even still, 20 years on, I've always felt a little bit out of place in this business because you never quite know where you're going to be the next day.
Did you feel like you had like a 10-year plan post-Idol?
God, no. No. I mean, did I have a 10-year plan? No. But post-Idol, immediately post-Idol, you do, we're talking, we walked off stage. And later on that week, Ruben was on the Today Show the next morning. I was on GMA the next morning. We were the biggest stars in the country for that year. And so in the moment, you do think, oh, this is going to last forever. Like I was 24, which is old by Idol standards now. But I was 24 and thinking, God, this is wonderful. I'm set forever. You don't. So I thought, of course, then I'll be doing this till I'm 80. At some point, within the next year, you start realizing, oh, well, okay, we've got this album out, but now I have to worry about the next one. And now I've got to do a tour. So you start thinking, okay, what's next? And since I had that realization, no. And I have frustrated a lot of people who work with me because I do always ask, when they say, oh, you should do this, my next question is, great. And then what's after that? I always want to know what's after that. We never know. No one's ever had an answer of what's after this album. But I always ask, okay, let's say I do, you think I should do Spamalot on Broadway. Why? And what do we think comes after Spamalot? And if there's no answer, if there's simply, well, we don't know, then I don't do it. I want to know what it's going to lead to next. And like I said, rarely is that right, but I always want to believe that there is we see what this could lead to. We see what this next thing will do. And whether it's right or not, like I said, rarely it is, but I still like to believe that there's a plan.
Are you happy that your mom pushed you to be a singer or believed in you?
Well,
so
I can't blame her. I can't blame her for that because, this make me slide around. I can't blame her for it because I'm the person who went to the Idol audition myself.
But you were supposed to be on The Amazing Race.
Well, I wanted to be on The Amazing Race because I thought Amazing Race would be fun. But Amazing Race is not something that you do and assume that it's going to lead to anything, right? Yeah, I'm going to do it. It'll be fun. I just love the show.
And if you win money, cool.
You get free trips to these places everywhere. I don't know why I did Idol. I would blame it on the mother of a kid who I worked with who convinced me to go and try out. And I did try out in Charlotte and didn't make it. And then it was just pure stubbornness because I was like, oh, hell no, you're not going to cut me on the first day. So I went back and I auditioned the next week in Atlanta and then made it on.
What changed in your audition?
I sang, well, I would say, but the song changed. A lot of things changed, but honestly for the worst because I went and I sang. I did not have a song at all planned for the Charlotte audition. I happened to be awake that Sunday morning and I thought early enough, I thought, you know what, I'm up already. I'll go down there. And I waited in line for a long time. And the person, God, was she in front of me or behind me? I think she was behind me, which makes it even meaner, was going to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And I had been listening to her singing, talking, and I had no plan. And so when I walked in, I was like, somewhere over, which in hindsight, thinking about it, the fact that she came in after me, what a dick move, right? So I stole the song from the person behind me, and maybe it was karma that made me get cut. So I didn't make it. The next week, I came over prepared, and I had 5 songs. I can't name them all now because I can't remember them all, but I had 5 songs in my head that I was going to sing. One was When You Get Caught Between the Moon and Arthur's theme. I think Open Arms was another one. I had a whole bunch. I was ready. I had learned them all and got into the audition and was so shit scared. So nervous because I had seen in Atlanta, I had camped out for 2 days. I went ready. I was like, I'll be damned if I'm gonna get cut again. I'm coming prepared. And so many people who had been singing up and down the street for so long were good. And I would watch them go in and then come out crying because they'd been cut. And I was like, oh my God, if this person's getting cut and that person's getting cut, holy shit. So I walked in, it was like 5 people in a cattle call. They had so many people in Atlanta, and they had us each step forward. I was first in my group, and I stepped forward, and I was so nervous. I forgot all 5 of the songs that I had come prepared for. I could not think of any of them. And I stepped forward, and the only thing, you're all too young to know this song, but I walked up, the only thing that came to my mind was, let's see if I can remember it, and you'll not know what it is. Sometimes the world looks perfect and nothing to rearrange. What's the chorus? Standing tall on the wings of my dreams, rise and fall on the wings of my dreams. Any idea? The rain and thunder, the wind and haze, I'm bound for better days. You don't know what it is, do you?
Stunning.
Is that the Perfect Strangers?
Oh my God, yes, you knew that. You're not old enough to know that show. He looked it up. He Googled it up. Yes, it's the theme song to Perfect Strangers, a TV show from the late 80s, early 90s, and that was all that would come to my mind. Completely, that was all.
There's no way anyone else auditioned with that song.
No, not only did nobody audition with that song, so we do all 5, and then the producer says, 5230, you stay. That was my number. 5230, you stay. Everybody else, you can go. And he said, after everybody was gone, he was like, what the fuck was that? He's like, what song was that? And I said, I am so sorry. That's all I could think of was a Perfect Strangers theme song. He said, do you know anything else? And by that point, I had beaten myself up enough that I remembered Always and Forever was one of my songs. So I sang a little of Always and Forever. And he said, okay, sing that, not that other shit. You can go through. And he put me through at that point. Thank God. He's still a producer on the show. He's the senior, he's one of the top producers on the show now. And he's still, he put me through, and thank God he was willing to let me sing another song, because I would have gone to Atlanta, slept for 2 days on the street, and totally shit the bed by not remembering any of my songs. But he gave me that second chance.
Also, weirdly, that song coming to mind gave you that one-on-one time to get like that is, and to collect yourself, to come to your senses, to
Well, had I not been the first, had I been the 5th, you're right, I would have probably collected myself and remembered my songs. But being first, yes, that song sort of saved me and gave me a chance to, I'm lucky that I got a second opportunity to try, you know.
Oh, the universe worked out exactly the way it needed to.
It has. It certainly did at that point for that.
That's insane.
Sorry, my phone was doing
That's
its thing.
okay.
No, I turned it off. I was like, oops, I should have done that earlier.
It's really, really special.
Also, your vocals there are incredible. You just bust that out of nowhere.
Casual.
Well, listen, that song saved my life, so I can remember it. It saved it and changed it. And that's the weird thing about, we did not have any idea when we did the show that it was a big deal. Season 1 had happened. Anybody on season 1 or 2 had no clue what they were getting into. And because season 1, obviously you wouldn't have a clue. And season 1 got like 9 million viewers, enough to be renewed, but not a big deal. And so we all went into it. I went into it like I would have gone into The Amazing Race. Sort of, this will be a fun thing to do, and then I'll come home. You know, it'll be a summer camp experience. And we had no idea that, holy crap, the show's going to turn into, it was 40 million viewers when we were done.
When did you realize, though, that this wasn't going to be 3 months and then your life goes back to normal?
Probably. I say that I realized it during the top week of the top 3, because we all got sent back home. But truthfully, it probably was the week of the top 3. They sent Ruben and Kimberly Locke and myself back to our hometowns, and we had been sequestered in this house in Hollywood for the whole time. And occasionally we'd go out to the mall to shop for the clothes for the show, and someone would be like, "Oh my God!" But we didn't. We mostly just saw what was the 300 people in the studio each week. We didn't know the world was watching. But I went back home to Raleigh, and I got there, and they took me in a helicopter and landed me in the baseball stadium to sing the anthem and throw out the first pitch. And there were 15,000 people, 20,000 people in that stadium for that, and I was like, holy shit! And people were chasing our cars. Even then, I thought, okay, this has just become a really big deal in my hometown because people are watching somebody in Raleigh who's on TV, but certainly in Topeka or Chicago or wherever else, they're not. So it probably wasn't until the next week when Ruben and I went to New York after the finale, and we did our talk show and whatnot. And there was a girl who was on earlier in our season, Frenchie Davis, who had left the show and gone on immediately to be in Rent on Broadway. And we wanted to go see that. And so we both got tickets to see that. Maybe 3-4 days after the finale, we went to the theater in New York to see it, sat down together, and everybody in the theater is just pointing in pictures. And they started the show, and then they actually stopped it because people were too busy turning around taking pictures of us. They stopped the show, moved us into the balcony, and restarted the show because there was such a hubbub. And in that moment, and I'm telling you, in the 22 years since, and I've been to plenty of Broadway shows, I've never seen that ever happen again. Certainly not to me, but even for anybody.
No, Hillary Clinton goes and sits in the crowd.
I just went to see Death Becomes Her the other night with Beyonce 2 rows behind me. They didn't even stop it for Beyonce. So that at that point, we both realized, oh shit, this is like, holy crap, everybody in the country watched this. You know what I mean? So it was probably that was probably the moment where we thought, damn. And in that moment, you do think, oh wow, this is my new life now. And to some degrees it did become, certainly not to that level, but it did become that way. But it changes. I mean, it ebbs and flows like everything, right?
I mean, defining moment of when it happens, but they're just as defining is when you realize that it is fading and things do.
Right. And that, well, that for me is a little easier to pinpoint. My fade, if you want to call it that, happened quickly when I came out because 2008 was a very different time than 2024 is. So I was actually on Broadway in Spamalot when that happened. And I did, I did the first 4 months of my run in Spamalot, and the show had sold out.
You were great,
standing
by the way.
room. Oh, did you see it?
Yeah, with my mom.
Oh, did you?
We were big American Idol fans.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you
I've been to
very
the
much.
tour.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
No, you're legit.
So I don't know if you came in the first half, if you came the pre-coming out version of Spamalot or the post, but I look in those first 4 months that I was there, the tickets were selling out or standing room only, or the ticket sales were great. And then you can actually take a look the week that I came out publicly, the People magazine story came out, the ticket sales the next week just drop. And the show ended up closing a few months later because ticket sales went to shit. So I can see my fate a little bit better than most people can because it really happened. I'd say maybe, I don't know, I can't put a percentage on it, but 50%-ish or so of the people who had followed me prior, who were fans, just sort of disappeared after I came out. So yes, you start realizing that. I had a kid at the time, so I had something far more important to me.
Totally.
When that happened, but it makes the challenge of coming back with a new album even more interesting to me because I came out and lost a bunch of followers because it wasn't okay to be gay at the time. But now in 2024, it totally is. So does that work? But now I'm really old. So it's all you learned how to navigate throughout all of it.
Disgracefully disgusting. Society?
Oh, my album is not disgracefully
no,
disgusting.
No, but
Zach.
society back then really was. It's true. Like that is.
Well, I mean, I would say, I wouldn't call it disgusting. I would certainly say it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and shameful.
I mean, it's hard to. You're young enough to. It was a different world. Obviously, I think a lot of things that have happened in American history are shameful, certainly. And I'm glad that we don't have segregation and the level of homophobia that we have. But I look at it through the lens of the time we were in, and I think it's just ignorance. In 2008, 2003, 2008, it was just that people were not, they were ignorant and they were afraid of something they didn't understand. As people have opened themselves up and learned more and learned that they don't need to be afraid of certain things, they don't need to be made uncomfortable by things, we've gotten better. And I think it's just a matter of us constantly as a society being willing to push ourselves into places that we aren't comfortable and learn that we can be, that there's nothing to be afraid of. So, I mean, yeah, it is unfortunate, but I don't know that I have a hard time being angry about it myself because it's just, it's just the way the world was at the time.
Were you angry about it in the moment?
No, I think in the moment I was more afraid. I mean, I remember the day that the story, I had done the story and told people, come out to people, and then they took a while to write it and put it on their cover or whatever. And the day that the story broke, I remember being more nervous. I had the beginning of my Spamalot, my entrance out this tower. I was so petrified to even walk out because typically I'd go out and there'd be a lot of applause, my first entrance on the show, and I just knew I was going to pop my head out of that tower and there was going to be booing or there were going to be people who were pissed off or whatnot. And throughout that entire show that evening, I was scared that I was going to be booed at some point because of the fact that everyone had just come out. And the audience, it was Broadway, so they were much more generous there. They didn't boo me. But I remember being petrified. And for the first few months, I think I was more nervous. I didn't have time to be scared. I was too worried. I had sort of a wall up for 30 years at that point, and it didn't come crashing down. It kind of got taken down by me, brick by brick. So I was too worried to be mad. And by the time I had taken the wall down, I wasn't mad. I never had time to be mad, I guess. I was too busy being worried. And by the time I was no longer worried, I had gotten over any anger that I might have had.
Well, yeah. Well, survival also takes over, right? Like you have to pivot and figure out what's next.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I realized that, but I didn't realize in the moment how I told you I could look back and see I can look back now and see the ticket sales for that show going down the next week. Like I can see it now. In the moment, I didn't realize how abrupt that change had been. There was also there was so much fascination about me in the media from 2003 to 2008. And after I came out, that media interest sort of waned also. And the ability to get on this talk show or that talk show sort of petered out. And I can look back now and realize, that had everything to do with they got what they wanted. They don't need my ass anymore. They're not interested. I didn't notice that at the time. It took a little bit longer for me to realize, wait a second. The excitement may have had something to do with me coming out. I didn't realize it in the moment.
Interesting.
I do now. I mean, I can look back at it now and realize that's what happened. But it probably wasn't until the last few years that I recognized that I didn't honestly, and this is going to sound naive and stupid, but I did not know that my sexual orientation was such a big story at the time. I knew it was when that came out, but for the years prior, like 2006, 2007, when I just thought I was putting out albums, I didn't realize that it was the lead story on Entertainment Tonight, Is Clay Gay, in 2006. I wasn't watching the news. I was busy working. So I look back now and realize, holy shit, that was a far bigger story than I realized it was. But like I said, but it's 20 years later. I'm not mad about it. I mean, can't do anything about it now.
No, that's right. That's the right attitude. But it's also like, it's so interesting. Like the media made a whole, the lead up. And then once they got their answer.
Right, I know. I guess I should be pissed, but I'm not. It's too late now.
God.
But listen, I look at it through the lens of, thank God that wouldn't happen now, It happened to me, it happened to Lance Bass, and the two of us, and maybe, I don't know, I can't think of anybody else.
But you paved the way for so many,
Well,
genuinely.
I don't know if I'd say that.
Oh, you took a few bullets.
We
so
took
a lot
the
of
bullets. I don't know if we paved the way. We took the bullets. Maybe that's what it is. But it's refreshing now to see not only that people come out and are able to do it on an Instagram post and it doesn't become a story, but also that sometimes when they come out, it makes them it improves their following, which is like great. I think that's incredible that you can have somebody who comes out as non-binary or trans or whatever, and it improve and like more people follow them for that reason. I think it's sort of ironic, frankly, but it's also shows how much progress we've made. And if you look back over the history of our country or the world even, and a lot of the struggles for human rights that have taken far, far longer to recognize that we in the span of 15 years, 16 years, have gone from where someone could come out publicly and then sort of be ostracized afterwards to where someone could 16 years later could come out publicly and become a big celebrity outside of it. That's great progress, and I don't see anything other than positive from that.
I could be wrong, but I don't think there's anything else in American history, and like the polls will show this, where for like the opinions of the American public change so quickly and so drastically.
And it has a lot to do with, just like I said, the being open to, experiencing or learning about something that previously had made you uncomfortable or afraid.
Totally.
And I use Ellen as an example a lot because my grandmother, God bless her, God rest her soul too, but she was very confused about gayness, we'll say. When I came out to her, she wasn't sure what it really even meant, but she knew that Ellen was gay. And she liked Ellen, and she watched her show every day. And Ellen didn't talk about being gay nonstop. She did her show, and she was fun and happy. And my grandmother liked her, and so I guess I'm fine with it. And I think that it just is a lot about. And unfortunately, I think nowadays we're just so disgusting. Here's disgusting how divided we have become.
Sure.
But I see too often people on my side of an argument who will say, anybody who disagrees with me or votes differently than me, you're ostracized for my life. I'm cutting you off of Facebook. Don't talk to me. You voted for somebody who's against my rights. Fuck you. And I get the anger. I understand the anger from it. But I lament the fact that whoever's posting that doesn't understand that what gets people's minds to change is being exposed to the things they don't agree with, the things they believe they don't agree with. And if we think that we are going to have any success by cutting off or canceling anybody who we disagree with, it's just, I think it just leads to more people getting more entrenched in their own views or in their, and sometimes I think backwards views. So I hope that I would love for people to recognize that if there has been change in this last 16 years, it probably has to do with the fact that for a good portion of that, we didn't bash people over the heads with what we believed was right, but we didn't retreat. We also didn't retreat from living our lives and being ourselves openly, so that people could see that there's nothing worth hating here. There's nothing worth being afraid of.
Can I ask, why did you think you'd make a great candidate for public office?
There's a little bit of why the do you think you should be in Congress?
Not at all.
No,
I honestly think that more people like you who make heart-centered, morally based decisions, who have a good head on their shoulders and have the ability to communicate and have work ethic, and they're willing to put 100% of that work ethic into the people and hold themselves accountable to the people. Selfless civil servants are required. So if you can meet those needs,
they are required, and I'd like to believe that's the answer to your question. I'd like to believe that's why I did it. What I have unfortunately learned over the past 10 years is that while yes they are needed, they are not successful.
Totally.
I think there are a lot who try. I think there are more out there who run than we know about, because usually they're the ones who won't take the money that's necessary to win, or they won't do the things that are. The first time I ran knowing I wasn't going to win. I actually ran in 2014 because the incumbent had been gerrymandered into her district in a way that she was able to not be accountable. She just didn't have to show up to do anything. And she was, I kind of feel bad about saying that she was awful, because by today's standards, she wasn't that bad. But at the time, she was not necessarily, she wasn't doing press. She wasn't talking to reporters. She wasn't debating her opponents. So I said, you know what? Ignore me. Try to run against me and not have to debate. Try to run against, because I knew that I had at least enough of a platform that it would bring attention to the district. It would bring attention to the race. But I knew that there was very little, if no chance, to win in this deeply, deeply partisan district that was on the other side of me. I ran in 22, but I'm contrasting that with in 22 when I ran in a
different district.
In a different district. Well, part of the same, gerrymandered again.
Which is such a huge problem that many people aren't even aware of,
Yes.
right? Because, we're talking about 1,000 other things when we're getting into these elections. But that is so vital to how we operate as a system.
It's the elected officials picking their voters instead of the voters picking their elected officials. Is what it is.
They're rewriting the lines of a
yes.
county, correct?
They draw. And North Carolina's lines have been redrawn 4 or 5 times in this decade alone because of court cases. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. So I did run again, and I ran again in the district that I grew up in and lived in most of my life. But now it had been redrawn up into be completely gerrymandered the opposite direction. So I ran in a primary with people who, from a political standpoint, I would say I probably would agree with 85 to 90% of the time. We all would have voted along the same way, about the same way. But let me tell you something, Zach. It was nastier and more crooked and corrupt than even the first one. I would have been fine running against the person who was in a different party than me for a long time, because it didn't really, it was gerrymandered, but we debated and we had differences of opinion. My opponent at the time had differences of opinion with me on a lot of different policy issues.
But it's not about that when you're debating your own party.
When it's your own party, it's just about trying to say why the other person is awful and should not. And that to me, and the amount of money that got spent for one candidate over the other. And it wasn't necessarily that this money was coming in to support one particular candidate. In my race, most of the money came in because one particular organization or one particular interest group did not want a female Muslim to become the member of Congress for that district. And so millions of dollars poured into one candidate to essentially consolidate the race away from this particular girl. So I just became so disheartened after that I realized, you know what? And you know what? Frankly, they could have consolidated. They could have spent that money to consolidate the vote around me also.
Yeah.
And I would have found it just as disgusting, because I knew that it wasn't necessarily for the lady who ended up winning.
Who did knock somebody else
It
out.
was simply because that particular group did not want this particular woman to win. And so I just thought, these are people who all would have voted the same way. And like I do have an opinion. I do believe that the people who I agree with tend to be a little bit less. You know what? I'm not going to say that. Both sides can be just as disqualifying of themselves when it comes to their behavior or the way they perform as the other. And it was at that point where I thought, you know what? This is not the West Wing. I hoped it was. I grew up thinking that politics could improve people's lives, that government could. And I just realized that no, both sides are really more interested in winning than they are in doing something for regular folks. And that's when I sort of said, I've washed my hands of this. I called my manager. I said, I recognize for the last 10 years, I've said I really don't want to do anything. I would only do enough TV to keep my health insurance. And then that was it. But you know what? Now I'm not doing politics again. I just can't stand any of them. So let's do music again. If they'll let me. And I went out on tour with Ruben, and that's how this all kind of, that's why I'm back here with you today. Talking about politics again somehow.
That is full circle. I mean, you got to expect that, like, once you run for office, I mean, in this case, twice, it is a part of your identity. Like, very few people in this lifetime step up to the plate in that way because it's hard, it's laborious, it's emotionally and mentally taxing. But there was something that set you up for it in American Idol in a unique way.
Well, what's funny is I'm not a competitive person. You would think that based on my resume up till now, I was the most competitive and unsuccessfully competitive person on the planet. I've done Idol, I did Apprentice, I did I did pre-politics Apprentice, and 2 terms of politics on my own. Lost every damn one of them. And you would think I'm just a glutton for punishment or really competitive. I'm not a competitive person. I told you from the beginning, it's not in my nature to go out and try to promote myself or go out. I've spent the last 20 years of my life doing things that are really not in my nature, but because I thought I would do well on Idol, so I tried it. I thought I'd do well on Apprentice. Why not? It'd be fun. I thought I could do well or do good by doing the political thing. And I guess I got to find another competition to do. But you, I can't. But you asked what about Idol set me up for it. I will say that Idol was a wonderful training ground for accepting criticism and learning how not to let it break you, at least. It didn't make it not you can never teach somebody how to be okay with it. But certainly when I did Idol, I'd walk out on stage. Nobody worried about whether they were going to mess up their song or how well. Everybody was worried about what Simon was going to say, right? And so you'd walk out on stage and I'd be done with my song, no nerves. At some point, I told you I was about to crap myself the first few weeks, but at some point you stop being nervous.
Yeah, you
about
understand the
performance.
camera and the stage.
You're used to it.
Yes.
But after you were done singing, you'd step to that spot and you'd have to listen down the row to see what Simon was going to say. And that's when you had a knot in your stomach every single time you performed, no matter how comfortable you were. So, and you take what he had to say in stride. By the end, I was ready to expect that more than likely he was going to say something snide. And if you can handle that, if you can do that, if you can stand in front of 40 million people and have someone say on live television that they prefer you with a bag over your head, or that's not what he said, but but something like that. I think he did say he preferred me with his eyes closed, but I preferred him with his mouth shut, so it's okay. If you can survive that, you really can survive anything.
It's true.
And so everything that came after that, including the political attacks, the things that people said about me were nothing compared to that. Because most of the people who are listening to us today didn't pay attention to my congressional races in North Carolina. So you get a sense of when a bad thing happens, you start recognizing or learn to recognize it's not as big a deal as you think it is. Something would happen, there'd be a tabloid story, and I'd look and I'd be like, oh my God, to you and to your circle and to your world, it's the worst thing in the world because you see it and everybody who's around you has seen it because either it's their job or they're your friends, so they Googled your name. But look at how many clicks that particular website gets every day. 1 million. Well, there's 330 million people in America. So you're talking about less than 1/3% that have even seen this bad story about you or that horrible picture that such and such magazine used on me the other day. This is true. I was like, who would use that horrible picture of me? Well, nobody saw it. Literally nobody saw it. And you kind of Idol prepared you for that because nothing in my life ever, I truly believe this. Nothing that I do from here on out will ever get as much attention as Idol did. So I don't care if it's a bad picture.
Totally.
People, I don't care how fat I get or how old I am now. Most people are still going to think I'm 24 years old.
And by the way, I don't think many things in culture
No.
will get that attention.
No, I was lucky in that, had I gone on Idol 3 years later even.
Different.
Completely different. I don't think that Carrie Underwood is probably the last universally known Idol winner. And seasons after that, you can always find someone who did really well. Chris Daughtry was season 5. Kat McPhee was season 5, who've done well. Jordan Sparks, I think, was 6. Adam Lambert was 9. I mean, you can find a lot of folks who have done well, but the country didn't watch those together. I feel very fortunate that Idol happened for me in a period where, one, we had just gone to war. We were still reeling from 9/11 in 2003. The country went to war while we were on the show.
Looking for an escape.
Looking for an escape from that. And we also didn't have DVR. I mean, TiVo was barely around.
You had no options.
So if you wanted to watch something, you watched it live. And I say to folks, our season of Idol, perhaps season 3, were the last time America did anything together. It really has been. Ever since then, things have become much more fractured.
So
Netflix came out, and we have streamers, we had DVR, we had all that stuff. And our season of Idol was the last time when the whole country sat down at the same time and watched the same thing. Obviously, that's not always true. The Super Bowl happens, but they all have helmets on, so you can't see their faces. And we watch a few political things, sadly, all together. But positive, happy things. I think it was the last time we did something as a country together. And for that reason, the good and the bad. The good is that people still recognize me. The bad is they think I look really old now, but comparatively. But I wouldn't do anything different in the sliding doors of life, right? Had I waited a year, had I not come out when I did, every single part of it, if I had done it any differently, I wouldn't have the kid I have. I wouldn't have the life I have now. I wouldn't be known and able to do another album and talk to you about it. So I don't have any regrets for it at all, but I think so much of it has to do with that show happening when it did.
It's the universe. It's timing. It's alignment.
Look, I feel like I'm at a Scientology meeting or something.
Oh, gee. Have you been to those?
No, I have not.
They haven't tried to recruit you?
Well, I did the Hollywood Christmas Parade yesterday.
Oh, geez. You saw their tree?
Well, the holding room is in the Scientology building. And there's a lady who runs that building, and she remembered I did it a few years back, and I was also in that building. And she comes around, and she's very friendly and greets you, but I'm always like, oh my God, is she going to try to recruit me?
The answer is yes.
Yes, I think
the answer is 100% yes, she is.
I've not given my number or email address.
Yeah. It's okay. She definitely already has it.
Yes. Right? Very carefully, making sure I don't say anything in the building because I got mics and cameras everywhere.
By the way, you can listen to Clay Aiken's brand new Christmas album. It's waiting for you. Christmas bells are ringing. It's all on Amazon Music. What are you thinking?
When they announced Ruben as the winner and you were the runner-up, did you ever expect that this many years later you guys would still have such a close relationship?
Yeah.
You did?
I think we knew that. I think we could tell. I mean, by that point, I knew that he had won before they said it because I'd seen the card right before we walked out on stage. And if you watch, I'm actually staring at his face when Ryan says his name because I wanted to see his reaction because I knew that he was going to win.
How'd you know?
Ryan was standing right next to me, and we were behind the screen about to go back out, and Ryan had opened it up just quickly to check, and I just saw that the name was longer. And so it was either that or mine, so I knew it was him. But we had become friends early on in the Hollywood weeks. I was hanging out with a bunch of girls at the bar or the restaurant in the hotel that night, and Ruben thought I was a player. He didn't realize they were all fruit flies. He thought I was a player, so he stepped over and he introduced himself, and we became friends from then on. And we both have, and we look so much alike that we just bonded over that. No, we as much as different as we are, we have certain similarities. We're both from small towns. We both love where we're from. We're both proud of our hometowns, and we just had this connection from day one. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we are so different. when you're different, you don't have expectations. He didn't expect me to know the stuff about sports that he knew. I didn't expect him to know, and we've always had that. And I think we knew right away. I can't speak for him, and if he were here, we'd be cutting up and acting foolish with each other and saying he didn't want to. But I do believe that had I won, he would have been just as happy for me as I was for him that he won. But yeah, I think we knew. Now, did we know we'd be touring together 20 years later? Probably not. I'm sure we dreamed that maybe we would, but we knew we were going to be bonded forever. Also, it's a I don't want to use trying situation, but it is a lot to go through right away with someone. The 16 weeks that we were on that show were just constant work. And there were, at that point, only really two other people, Kelly and Justin, who understood what it was like. And so that's why he and I had that bond. And that's why Kelly and I became so close when we toured together ourselves the next year, because at that point there were so few people who understood what it was like to go through to have your life changed overnight like that.
America loved a duo. Like we
They
love
do,
to
right.
like from Justin to Kelly.
Right,
Like we
from
love
Ruben to
this.
Clay.
We love this idea of like voting this I don't know, this package.
Yeah, and they love to put us at odds with each other. And it's taken almost 20 years. Even still, I think, people are surprised that we're friends. I think slowly, over 20 years, people now come to expect that and understand that we are going to be friends with each other. But they still ask the questions. I did this. I think I told you. I just did the parade, the Hollywood Christmas parade yesterday. And as I was going down the street, sitting on the back of this car, people were saying, "Where's Ruben? Where's Ruben?" And I'd just say, "In the trunk."
It's really special. It's something that will like live in Americana and cultural history forever.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will. I mean, I have no doubt we'll do stuff together again. He just put out a Christmas EP of his own. People should go listen to it as well.
We'll put a
what
link
Christmas
below.
means to me, but you have to listen to mine first. But we'll do stuff together because we love being on stage with each other. We enjoy working together. It's easy. You have a partnership that becomes easy. You don't have to think, and we love that about it. And yes, I think sometimes we are. What's the saying? Worth more than the sum of our parts. Together. Ruben and Clay has its own identity and is nostalgic. We're a much more nostalgic society now than we used to be.
I think we're ripe for a reinvention, Mr. Clay.
A reinvention of who? Me?
I mean, I
There's
think
not much left. I'm too old to be
I don't know.
reinvented.
I think culture can grab a hold of this and
What would
see where it goes.
God, what would they change me to? I don't know. I'm sure I need to be reinvented somehow, but I'm too old to change at this point. My knees are too creaky. So if you have an idea, we'll do a makeover show next time. Come on, and you guys can have people. It worked well last time I did a makeover on Idol. It worked out for me.
Yeah, from geek to chic, that was the whole thing.
From geek to chic and back to geek. When I don't have the whole team doing it for me, I'm lost.
And that's called the cycle.
Full circle.
Yeah,
yes.
it's really
Full
beautiful.
Circle back to. So I'll come back sometime, and you guys have to do a re-chic makeover. It's too late for me now.
Do you think a show like American Idol can ever find its legs again, or be as relevant as it was?
Do I? It's interesting. It's still one of the highest rated shows on TV. So I don't know that it is. I don't know that it is not still relevant in the TV world. I think it goes back to us being so fractured as we're
media
very
consuming
fractured as a
society.
media in our media world. I know that the way they produce it now is different. The executive producer, the showrunner of the show, was an AP when I was on the show. She's worked her way up through the ranks, and now it's her show, right? And in talking to her, they do a lot more work to try to make it shareable. So whereas when I was on the show, it was a long hour-long show, a 2-hour episode. Now it may still be an hour or 2 hours on TV, but they work really hard to make sure that they're bites that can be shared on social media. And there are very few shows that get shared as much as Idol's clips do. So it still has a relevance. But I think if you're asking about relevance when it comes to creating names that that do as well as Chris Daughtry or a Carrie Underwood. I think that has a lot to do with who produces the show and who owns it. When I was on, when Kelly was on, when Carrie all those names that you remember, when we were on the show was owned by and produced by 19 Entertainment, which was our record label and our management company also. So they were also producing the show. They had Nigel Lithgow there creating the show, and the people who came off the show would then become artists on their record label and for their management company, which meant that the show had a vested interest in making sure that those artists became career artists.
Vertically integrated
yes,
system.
Very much so. And a few years after that, I think maybe season 5, 6, 7, 19 sold its stake, and the show became mostly owned and run by the network. So the network had really no vested interest in whether the artists became big stars or not. You know, the network needed a good show that rated well, that now got shared well on social media. And if the artist did well, who cares? Because they didn't have a stake in them afterwards. Again, going back to being lucky for being in it when I was in it, we were on it in a time when not only did the network didn't really even want it. The network did not. It got rejected. Idol got rejected by all the networks. Fox took it only because Simon Fuller had it paid for. Coke paid, Ford paid. They got all these sponsorships to pay for it. So Fox was like, sure, you've had it paid for. We'll give you the time on the air. And they got to run the show the way they wanted to. Simon Fuller created the show to create artists for his management company and label. And therefore, they produced it in a way that made sure you fell in love with Kelly Clarkson. You fell in love with Ruben Studdard. You got to know Justin and Clay. You felt an ownership. I mean, there was a magic to the way they produced it. And they produced it to not brainwash America, but to get America to like these artists, Fantasia and so on.
So true.
And they don't need to do that anymore, right? They're not worried about that because they just want to make sure they have a good TV show. And The Voice has been a successful TV show does anybody, I'm not trying to talk crap about it, but I don't think most people know who's won The Voice or been on The Voice in a year. But the ratings do well because they like the judges. So it's a different thing now. They're creating a different kind of show.
It's very interesting. But you can make the case that if an artist succeeds, that the success of that artist leads into the success of the following season. And
you could, but often, even with Kelly, it took a little bit longer.
Yeah.
You know, Kelly's first album did well, but it wasn't until Breakaway 2 years later that she
Rockets.
became the superstar that she is. And so to them, they don't want to wait that long for somebody to have that sort of success and help their show. And they can do it they believe they can get the success by having big names like Carrie Underwood become a judge, or having, you know, Bublé or whoever else is a judge on The Voice now. Those are the folks that draw the ratings, and the gamification of it is fun to watch. The turning of the chairs. The auditions on The Voice is really no different than the auditions on Idol, except for they have those fancy chairs that turn, and we want to see who's going to turn.
I love The Voice. I also think the talent production on The Voice is superior.
Well, I'm not going to pretend I watch it.
No, I do.
Because I'm from another franchise, so I watch them on.
I think it's exactly what you said. It's about the judges, not the competitors.
It's about the chair.
Yeah.
It's about the chair spinning. And I mean, I do know there have been some great talents on there, but it's about the production.
Yeah.
And even now with Idol, you know, frankly, I will say this: I don't think the judges are necessary, because all they're going to do is say how great you are. Like, you're going to sing your song, you're going to do fine, and then we're going to spend 2 minutes with the judges saying, "You were wonderful. That you're a star." And I just think, like, give them some constructive criticism. You don't have to be mean like Simon, but push them to get better. That was the blessing from our season. Well, while it was tough the way he said it, it did give me something to work towards the next week to do better with. You know?
But it also, like, it daisy chained into it. You wanted to see if you followed those notes. It was a larger thing that was being built. Also, this idea of the audition. We got rid of bad auditions, and we've just been staged auditions. And maybe that's based on, like, who actually shows up because of, like, what they think the relevance of the show may be as it relates to their larger career. I don't know. But, like, give me the auditions at least a little bit.
Yeah, no, I did notice you don't see many auditions at all anymore.
I remember so vividly sitting in my TV room with my mom and sister, and it would cut to commercial right when you thought someone was going to hit Ryan Seacrest because they stormed out and they're crying and they're cursing and their mom and their sister's out there waiting to see if they've gotten a golden ticket. Like, it's a big thing.
Well, I do think at some point, and I don't know when it was, people who were not good did stop showing up.
I know,
because they knew they might be embarrassed.
It tarnished their reputation.
Right. But I also think that we do live in, we're back to that. We live in a different world now.
Yes.
2024 is very different, and for all the good that we've already discussed that has changed in those intervening years, there's also a sense that we cannot criticize anybody, because you worry about offending someone, and obviously nobody wants to offend, but sometimes if somebody's not great, it's okay to be honest with someone. And I don't think that television audiences right now are as willing to accept that. And the types of judges they have are also not willing to dispense it either. I mean, Simon Cowell was 100% unknown to America.
And ruthless.
Until a few seasons in. Seasons 1 and a little bit of season 2, people didn't know who he was. That mean judge guy. Paula Abdul had an incredible career and was on the downcline of hers, so she didn't have anything to lose if she had been saying something mean. Nobody knew who Randy Jackson was from Adam, so these were judges who were willing to just be honest. Katy Perry has a career she has to think about. Lionel Richie, legend. I don't know why he feels like he has anything. He needs to be careful. He's got a career everybody would love to have, but he and Luke Bryan also want to not upset anybody. And you worry because you say something mean to Ian Tongi.
He's so great.
Who was great, but I mentored him the year that I went back. He was one of the kids they brought into me, and I mean, yes, his voice would just shake you to the core.
And by the
way, that good.
Someone who played songs that he had already played probably 1,000,000 times.
Right, but that is why I wanted him to push him. I just wanted somebody to say, put the guitar down next week and do something a little different. It doesn't even have to be a song that you don't know. It can be a song you already know, but show me you can do something a little bit more. And they never pushed him. One of the best voices I may have ever heard in person in my life. Sitting next to him, you could just...
Crazy.
It shook me. But I wanted to see him expand a little bit, just do a little bit more of something. And that's what Paula pushed me to do. I sang ballads nonstop, always sang a ballad. That's what I'm good at. And she kept pushing me to do something more up-tempo, and I finally did. And, I didn't have to do it every week, but I did it one week to prove that I could do it without falling off the stage. And then I went back to my ballads. And I think that the judges probably now worry that if they say something they might say something too harsh, and then people who love Ian won't buy tickets to their show or will trash them on Twitter. Everybody's opinion gets on Twitter and gets shared. And you know what? Sometimes everybody's opinion doesn't matter. I'll be the first to say it. That's why I'm not on it very often. I don't need to hear everyone's opinion on everything.
But it's true. Like back then, people's opinions are confined to their living rooms.
Exactly.
Like,
or the message boards. Occasionally there was a message board. But
not like Twitter.
But nobody read it, right? So except for Trinice. Trinice would go on every week and see what was on the message board. And be like, "Girl, stop! You are good. You don't need to see those." But we would. Yes, it is a different world all the way around than 20 years ago. And yes, sometimes I do think Twitter and all those social media things have opened up a lot of society that needed to be, but I think it's gotten out of hand sometimes too, because I don't need a comment on every single thing that so-and-so wears or so-and-so says.
It's true. We've genuinely democratized every the type of media out there.
Is it democratized, or because sometimes I think that we put too much emphasis on it? I mean, people will look at Twitter and see what the responses are and assume that can be extrapolated to the rest of society.
But it is.
And it's not even close. I mean, I don't know how many people are active on Twitter every day, but it's less than 0.5% that is constantly active. So if we're taking that as if though it is the societal opinion,
I agree.
we're wrong.
But here's what I will say, because we can talk politics, as you are someone who ran for, public office.
Yes.
I was of that mindset, and then we just entered into an election where we thought TikTok defined who the next president was going to be, and then we realized real quick that that was not reality.
Right.
And then we also witnessed somebody who could have become president not become president because they refused to sit down for an unedited conversation, an unedited podcast, and humanize themselves. And we live in a world where Twitter ended up rightly detecting and determining where everything fell just a few weeks ago. I questioned its size and power, and then we lived on November 5th.
Well, I think that might have been a coincidental. I mean, that might have been coincidental or circumstantial because Twitter did accurately predict it, but had Elon Musk not jumped in and taken over Twitter, it wouldn't have. Twitter had a far left bent for a long time.
100%.
Far left bent. It happened to take a more right bent now because Elon Musk has taken it over and allowed different types of opinions, and a lot of left-wing folks have left and gone elsewhere, right? So Twitter correctly predicted this particular outcome simply because Twitter happens to now be a more right-wing sort of place than it used to be.
But the mobilization of that platform and the mobilization of young conservative men who happen to be utilizing very public social media platforms that anybody can post on, they ended up determining this election.
Well, you're saying men in general, young men in general.
Yes.
I think
and
that I think that there's certainly a demographic of people, whether it be just young men or, working class folks. They're demographic of people, and this is going to sound cliche because everybody said it, that feel like they have been left out of politics,
100%.
Politics, media, entertainment, everything. Not just politics, but they have been left out of the 2024 society, because a lot of media is centered around Los Angeles. It's centered around New York. And if you live in New York and you live in Los Angeles, you see a very different demographic in general than you see in Montana or you see in Arkansas and Missouri. And so media starts to has started to actively try to look like or sound like what it sees around it in New York City or what it sees around it in Los Angeles. And that's not always what America looks like. And I think that for that reason, all these folks, and I think Twitter has given them a platform to air their frustrations. It may not, I still don't believe that it is a microcosm of America, not even for a second, but it has given people an outlet to air their frustrations about how the rest of the media world doesn't sound or look or feel like something they can relate to. Twitter versus TikTok. You just said yourself, TikTok made it look as if though one side was going to win. Twitter made it look as if so another side was going to win. Well, that shows us that TikTok is the platform where the typical mainstream elite type folks might be.
Totally.
And Twitter has become a platform where, less elite type folks, people who feel left out might have gone.
I'm also getting a more curated feed on TikTok, whereas on X, Twitter, I'm getting a curated feed in the opposite direction, right? It's curated on behalf of Elon Musk and his beliefs, not mine, right?
And that's very well maybe true. But that is also, if you ask me, listen, if you opened up my Google News feed right now, you would think the biggest stories in America were about airline frequent flyer miles because I happen to be looking it up that week or whatever it is I'm looking at. People don't, and nobody gets that. Nobody understands it. My mother does not understand that that's not the biggest story in the world. It's coming up 5-6 times on your feed because you always click on it. So it gives you what it thinks you want. But that means that you end up missing out on, not only 5-10 other important stories, but you miss out on other sides of other opinions. I do my best to try to knock out of my Google News feed anything that comes from some outlet that I'm already going to listen to or already believe in. I want to hear the views on the other side. Sometimes they drive me up the damn wall, but I want to read them because if I don't know, then I don't know what other people are talking about.
Totally.
And I think that Facebook is the same way. it feeds you all of them.
Yeah,
feeds you what you
it's
want.
built to do that.
Yes,
Like
and
it's
that I think that has harmed us some.
100. Yes.
Bubbles and echo chambers for sure.
Okay, we got to get out of here. Christmas bells are ringing.
Yes.
Listen to
by the way,
album.
I have a Christmas album.
It's an incredible body of work. Put it on while you're decorating this holiday season. Link below. Amazon Music. You good?
Yeah, one more question. Now that you're talking about that, is Donald Trump the same guy today that you knew in 2012?
No. Well, listen, I hope. I don't know. I certainly have not seen I haven't seen much evidence of the person who I knew and worked with. But I do think that there are glimmers of a person who does want to be liked, who wants to be loved, really. And I hope that that person shows himself more over the next 4 years because he doesn't have to lose again. Mm-hmm. And that's all he really didn't want to do. He just didn't want to lose. He never has to lose again. He never has to run again. And he can, if he wants, spend the next 4 years proving all the people who don't like him wrong. And there's no better way to get back at people who don't like you than to prove them wrong. And if he will spend those 4 years trying to prove everybody who said he was going to ruin the country and destroy democracy, if he will spend the next 4 years trying to prove them wrong, that would be lovely. I'm just going to try my best to remain hopeful.
That's a great outlook on it.
Yeah. What are the actual chances of that?
You never know.
I just keep going back to the fact that I do believe that the reason that he was unwilling to accept the results in 2020 are not really because he wanted to continue to be president, but simply because he does not want to lose. He does not like to lose. He does not like it. He refuses to accept it. That's why he doesn't apologize for anything. He thinks it's weak. He didn't want to accept that he had lost meant that he had to admit that over half the country did not want him to be president, and he wasn't going to do that. And there is benefit. This time he's won. He's won the popular vote also. He has won the most decisively that he ever will again, and he doesn't have to run again. He won't run again. He can't run again. So
You sure about that?
yeah, I'm sure that the Constitution does not allow that. Absolutely.
Today, it doesn't.
Well, the Constitution takes a lot more to be changed than just one person saying it has to be changed. I mean, 34 states have to ratify it. I don't think we have 34 states that'll ratify that change. So it is. I also don't think he has any desire to be president personally. I just don't think he wants to be president. He doesn't not want to be president, but I don't think that's his main goal. His main goal is being the most important person or the most popular or whatnot. And I think, there is a chance that he will want. What are the chances? I don't know. He's going to be president for the next 4 years. It's going to happen. And so I can spend the next 4 years giving myself more ulcers, or I can hope that he, I said to somebody not too long ago that when he used to fire somebody on the show, America would only see a few minutes, a second or two of him saying, "Zach, you're fired." But truthfully, he would spend like 30 minutes, and I'm not exaggerating here, praising whoever was. We knew who was going to get fired 20 minutes before it happened because he would praise them for 20 minutes before he could finally muster up enough to say, because he did not want to hurt somebody. He didn't want someone to not like him. And when he was about to fire George Takei, he just did not have it in him to just say, "George, screw you, you're fired." He would praise how much and we could see it coming like, "Oh, well, we know who's going this week because he's praising George a lot." So, and then he would fire them. There's a piece of him that just wants people to like him. And he doesn't have that many folks loving him right now. I mean, even people who voted for him, a lot of them took him over the alternative, for them at least. And I think that he has the chance to improve his legacy. He's gotten this office again with over 50%. He's never going to get 70% of America to love him. He knows that. But he also doesn't anymore need to appeal to the basest of the group that elected him. He doesn't have to appeal to the racist faction. He doesn't have to appeal to the anti-Semitic faction. He could, if he was advised well, spend 4 years trying to do some of the things that even Democrats would be cool with. He could spend some time making his legacy better. And I just, I hope he's listening.
If you were advising him, what would you say?
No, well, I've just said it. I mean, I said
But
I would just.
in what ways should he improve the country?
I'm sorry.
In what ways do you think he can improve the country?
Well, listen, he's talked about. I mean, he's talked about capping interest rates for credit cards at 10%. That's something Bernie Sanders wants to do. Also, I'm doing so much more politics than I should be, but I'll do it. That's something Bernie Sanders has wanted to do. He talked for a long time about improving the infrastructure in this country, which, yes, President Biden has done a good job on, but there's still plenty more to be done. We do have a broken immigration system. His basis solutions, the most aggressive and demeaning, dehumanizing ways of handling that are absolutely not the way to go. There's certainly a way. I hope that there's a way that he could find compromise there. That to me is not deporting 10 million people. It's just not good for the economy. But there's certainly, hopefully, a way that he could improve the legal immigration system. I mean, there's a lot of things that he could do that might not satisfy the furthest extreme parts of his base, but would satisfy a much larger chunk of America. And he doesn't need that furthest extreme because he's not going to run again. And I guess that's what I would advise him on. I would say that people who advised him his first term, who told him, no matter what you do, you're never going to get Democrats to like you, so you have to keep satisfying this far right wing of the party, were probably right. I mean, I'm not glad that he did that, but from a political standpoint, they were probably right that he had to satisfy those folks. But he doesn't anymore. And so I don't think he cares about what other people think. So I think if he was really trying to serve himself, then he would serve himself better by trying to get more people to like him. And I think that there is a chunk of folks who would be open to giving him credit for certain things if he made the attempt.
I mean, you're amazing. You were genuinely, like Clay Aiken, you were one in a trillion. I don't think.
Well, thank you.
No, seriously. Like, who else exists in this way? Nobody. Nobody could almost win the popular vote of America.
Almost.
And then
and then almost win 4 other votes.
I mean, there are like very unique conspiracies on the internet that I think there's like 135,000 margin, or it was a very slim margin between you and Ruben.
It was slim, but he won, and I do not dispute the results of any election I have been involved in.
I respect that. Please listen to the album. Christmas Bells Are Ringing. There's a link below. It's all waiting for you on Amazon Music. Clay Aiken, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.